Hi, everyone. This is David, and welcome to this week's live stream, December 15th. And it is great to have all of you here. If you haven't yet signed in, please hit the chat box real quick and give me your name and where you're from. If this is your first time visiting us on our regular Wednesday live stream, as you can see in the comment that I've already posted. Today, we're going to focus on what is called connected speech. And what flows from connected speech is this set of weak forms of English words that are essential that you know and can understand in order to listen and understand someone who is speaking fluently and for you to speak fluently as well. We'll follow our regular process, which is I'm going to begin with a quick lesson here, 5, 6 minutes, I think at most. And then we're going to follow that with a little bit of practice. And then we'll open it up for anybody's questions on any topic whatsoever, any topic related to your education and to learning English in particular. Okay, so with that as background, let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, today's lesson is on connected speech and the weak forms that appear whenever a speaker conducts connected speech. But first, before we begin, let me ask you this question. Serious question. Who'd you give it to? Who'd you give it to? If you look up in an English dictionary, you will not find the word who'd, you will not find the word j, and you will definitely not find the word give it. There are no give it's in English. There are no who'ds in English. What you're seeing there is a different form of English that does not appear in dictionaries. That form of English that you're seeing right now and just heard results from what is called connected speech. And connected speech produces a very different version of English than the strong version. The strong version would be who? Who did you give it to? Who did you give it to? And there you can sense that I paused and I clearly enunciated each word, which is not often the case in connected speech. Connected speech basically means that someone is going to be speaking, but is not going to be pausing or perhaps pausing only a slight amount between the words. Speech without pauses. The result of this speech without pauses is that some of the words in connected speech take on what is called their weak forms. These are words that, there are about 40 of them, that have two forms, two pronunciations. One is a strong pronunciation, and the other is its weak pronunciation. The sounds in these weak words are what is called under-enunciated. Under-enunciated is just a polite term for sounds that are completely omitted from their strong counterparts. Sounds that are changed, usually from long vowels to short vowels, and sounds that become blended together from two sounds to one. What causes these 40 forms of weak words and their pronunciations, weak forms, I should say, in their pronunciations? A lot of it is thought to be due to the fact that English is a timed stress language. What the heck is a timed stress language? In a timed stress language, syllables are accented at approximately regular intervals. So, what comes in between those intervals? unstressed syllables come in between those intervals. So that in English, you have a kind of rhythm. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Stress, unstressed. Stressed, unstressed. Now, not every language in the world is a timed stress language. Some are timed syllable languages in which each syllable is enunciated at a regular pace. And these are often the Romance languages, especially. So in English, we do need to deal with syllables that change substantially because English is a timed stress language. They change and they also, unfortunately, disappear. The good news is that these changes happen almost exclusively to function words, also called grammar words. In other words, they are not content words. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs are content words. Everything else is a function word. Articles, prepositions, pronouns, modals. I could even add conjunctions in there. So there is a limited group to which these changes happen. And that's good news for anyone who is learning English as a second language or additional language. Many of you have more than two languages. Many of you have 3 and 4 languages. So let's talk about words with weak forms. As I said earlier, depending upon how you count them, there are between 30 to 40 of these words with weak forms in English. And that means that this group of words, relatively small group of words for you language learners, can be studied and mastered. That's good news. And one step toward this is to have a handout like the one I provided and that I'm linking to here. A handout that can serve as a kind of pronunciation guide to these English words, function words with weak forms. And notice, by the way, that usually your teachers of English try as much as possible to enunciate each syllable fully in order to avoid somewhat connected speech, in order to avoid those 40 words which have their weak forms. So if you ever wonder, why can I understand my English teacher better than other native speakers? The answer is simple. Your English teacher probably is not using connected speech when giving you instruction. Okay, let's practice a little bit. Let's take this sentence. First, we'll practice saying it in its strong form. And its strong form simply means that we're going to enunciate each syllable. I gave him a box of pens for his graduation. And that's the kind of speech that you would hear in formal presentations, addresses before large groups of people, and so forth. Now, let's break it down into its connected speech version, in which you would say something like, I gave him a box of pens for his graduation. Let's break down what is happening to each of those function words. Instead of I gave him, it's I gave him. I gave him. If you want to practice for a second. Oh, hello, Salama. Welcome to the chat. I'm great. How are you? Great to have you here. Salama, basically, I want you to kind of practice saying these things with me. Instead of I gave him, I want you to say, I gave him, gave him, I gave him. Practice that. And instead of saying a box, a box, practice saying a box, a box. So now we have, I gave him a box. I gave him a box. Gave him a box. Notice how it goes, bum, bum, ba, bum, ba, bum. Also notice what are the two words that have been changed. Both are function words, are grammar words. Continuing. Pins. Practice with me. Of pins. Of pins. Not of, but of. Not of, but of. Let's put it together now. I gave him a box of pins. I gave him a box of pins. You can hear the music there, the rhythm. Again, the unstressed syllable is a function word or a grammar word. We'll say these three together. For his graduation. For his. Say that one with me. For his. For his. That is a completely different enunciation than for his. For his. It's a completely new word. The sounds are blended together. For his into basically one word. So let's practice the connected speech version. We'll first say, I gave him a box. You ready? I gave him a box. I gave him a box. Ima. I gave him a box of pens. Of pens. Of pens. For his graduation. What can we conclude from this practice? We can conclude that there are two Englishes that you must master. One English is the English that you practice in school. It is a strong English. It is a formal English. The second English is the English of connected speech. And this is often why, despite hours and hours of studying vocabulary and grammar, the fluency of listening and understanding a native speaker, your own fluency when you speak the language, might lag behind. You know the grammar. You know the vocabulary. What is missing? What is missing is these 40 words, also called function words or grammar words. More good news is that you will see that there are very clear patterns. And I want to go over the handout that I prepared for you so that we can identify some of these patterns. However, but before I do that, let me check in to see who else is here. So far, only Salama has checked in. Salama, do you have any questions before we begin the second part of this presentation? Pause just a moment to let Salama answer. Oh, hello, Savannah just joined us. Great to have you here, Savannah. Uh, Savannah, the other student here is Salama. Salama, I believe, lives in Norway and speaks Arabic, I believe, and English and Egyptian. Do I have that correct, Salama? Savannah is from Indonesia, and she speaks Indonesian, English, and Korean. Okay, Salama has no questions and urges me to carry on. And Savannah says that she just woke up. Okay. Well, hello, and thank you for staying up past midnight, Savannah. So basically, in this handout, I want us to notice what kind of patterns that we can see. First, let me clarify that this handout, and there is a link to it in the YouTube description. This handout contains the 40 common words in English that have weak forms. And the idea is that with this handout and with a moderate amount of practice and study, that you can master this second English. And the second English is the English that is produced during connected speech. Sweden, I'm sorry, Salama. I said Norway. It was Sweden. So thank you very much. So Salama speaks Norwegian, English, and Arabic. Is that correct, Salama? At least I had you correctly placed in a Nordic country. Salama, I think that I just remembered that you were originally from the Sudan. Is that correct? I know there's a lag here, so take your time. Okay, let's go over these words. I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of this. And our first one is the article a or a. And invariably in connected speech, when a is not in a stress position, it is reduced to a schwa. And one of the patterns that you can see here, let me highlight them for you, is how many vowel sounds in connected speech become schwas. And I'm highlighting them here for you. This has been called the schwaing of English. And the schwaing of English has been taking place since the 17th century. It's something that some linguists bemoan, but others, this includes me, see it as any of the other natural changes that all languages undergo over time. It's neither good nor bad, it simply is. So, what did Serene buy? Serene bought a new computer. And this is a pattern that I want you to be aware of. There is a linking there between the content word and the grammar word. In really fast speech, it's not just I bought a. You will actually hear the T and the go together. I bought a new computer. so that boughta is almost a single word. And you hear this often in English. I tried a I tried a new pen. I played a I played a new station. So that coming after a verb is going to be often connected to that verb. This one is interesting because it shows the difference between what happens in a unstressed syllable as opposed to a stressed syllable. I'm 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 not going to sleep. Am I? The am I is stressed because it forms a question at the word. The am and the I become the reversed in order to signal a yes or no question. But that first I'm would be the most intelligible form, weak form, but it is often reduced to I'm I'm not going to sleep. Certainly not I am. It's either I am going to sleep or I'm no vowel at all. It's been completely reduced to a bilabial consonant. Here's the word and. And again, you're going to hear that linkage between the verb and the article that follows it. Ricardo has an avocado farm. Ricardo has an. Hear that linkage? Here you very clearly in this next sentence, sugar and spice. You hear very clearly the the rhythm that is caused by English being a timed stress language. So instead of sugar and spice, it's sugar and spice, sugar and sugar and. Here we have a modal, which is here serving as a function word or grammar word. Water, water. Again, that's not a word you're going to find in an English language dictionary. Water. What are the what are the what are the odds? What are let's see. Let's look at can. Can presents us another example of a weak form that has completely eliminated the vowel sound. Normally in English, if you've learned this rule, all English syllables must consist of at least one vowel sound. If you have learned that rule, keep in mind that rule is for formal English. That rule is not for the English that is produced by connected speech. So here we have a form of the word can that has been reduced to a monosyllabic consonantal syllable. You can bet, you can say it with me. You can. That's a weak form. I point that out because it's one of the more severe forms of a weak form. Let's go over for because it is so common. It is one of the most common words in English, as you know, to, from, for, of. And they all have very distinct weak forms. Here we go from for to it's time for. It's time for. It's time for. No R in it. It's time for. Time for. Speaking of, let's look at of. You get the same kind of reduction in this very common, very important word in English, where we go from of, to that high back vowel of, to either a schwa or no vowel at all. The managers, the managed were, excuse me, the managers were part of part of part of the problem, part of part of. So you can either say of or eliminate the schwa, part of, where you get only the bilabial fricative, voice fricative. Here is two. I want to go over two because it is often linked to other words. In other words, learning the weak form of two is not enough. You must also become accustomed to hear it in its linkage. So let's hear the linkage here. I have no idea why the word verb intend is in there. It should be go to. Okay. We gotta, we gotta, we gotta, we gotta, we gotta, gotta. We could almost put in a D here, huh? We gotta go to the farmer's ball this year. Was is a very common word. Instead of was, it is shortened to was, from was to was. The result was. Let's point this one out. If you don't already know this, please learn it right now. Any apostrophe in a contraction indicates a shortened syllable. So all the apostrophe is doing is alerting you to the fact that you will be using a weak form of the verb, not a strong form. So apostrophes are very good things because they alert you to the coming of the weak form. So instead of she will arrive tomorrow, that apostrophe tells us it's a contraction of what? Of the vowel sound. She'll arrive tomorrow. She'll. It's almost like you're saying the word shall. She'll. Okay. The most common form of you is j. Where did you? Where did you? Where did you? Where did you go today? Okay, so what patterns can we learn? We learn that the reduction is often from long vowel to short vowel. We learned that the short vowel is either the schwa, or the I, which is almost a schwa. And give it a couple of decades and the I will become a schwa. From long vowels to short vowels, you're not going to find any diphthongs. That these shortened words are always function words, or what we also call grammar words, and that these words are their weak forms that have the words that have the weak forms are also often connected or linked to the content words around them. Okay, well, let me get back to our full screen here. And I'll take up some questions. Salama. Salama is speaking 3 languages, English, Arabic, and Swedish. And yes, okay, I did remember correctly. You are from the Sudan. And you've been living in Sweden for 5 years. So I bet your Swedish is very, very good. I'll correct you. Oh, sure. I will be happy to correct you, Salama. I don't usually do that in chats, but let me look at what you wrote. Yeah, the only thing you would need there is because English, Arabic, and Swedish are proper nouns, you would put and you're using the word language there, uh, you would definitely capitalize them. Now, if you use language, you're going to have to put a "the" in front of them. The English, Arabic, and Swedish languages. If you left off language, then you would not have the "the." So you're kind of in between 2 idioms. It could either be I'm speaking English, Arabic, and Swedish, or I'm speaking the English, Arabic, and Swedish languages. That's about it. Otherwise, I think you're in great shape. So I don't know if you want me to correct your punctuation, but I'm happy to do that as well if you want me to. Brandon. Hi, Brandon. Brandon, welcome to the chat. Brandon, you remember Salama. We also have with us today Savannah. Savannah is from Indonesia, and she speaks Indonesian, English, Korean, and a little bit of your language. No, I'm sorry, she doesn't speak Vietnamese. She speaks a little bit of Tagalog. And Savannah, Brandon is fluent in Vietnamese and English and a little bit of Spanish. And Brandon's question is, the R in sugar and spice are yeah, pretty close to it, Brandon. I think you could say that any of those modals are like are going to be contracted as well. Yeah, I think you're right there, Brandon. And that's a good notice on your part. Good eye or good ear. Okay, other questions about what we just covered or about anything else that you want me to cover? While you're coming up with questions, Salama, you would definitely want to put a period after the word language because that's a complete sentence. Here's a tricky one for you. See the yes that you wrote? There needs to be a comma after that yes because it is what is called an interjection. Interjections, yes, no, oh, are always set off by commas, as are items of direct address. Sir, comma. But I've been living in Sweden. You want to capitalize Sweden. And then a period after 2016. Oh, and also a subject-verb agreement not subject-verb, leaving off the verb after there. If there is any mistake, is, and there the verb would agree because you chose to use an expletive to begin the sentence. Expletives are it, there, what. Because you chose to use the expletive, the noun or subject comes after the verb. So the verb is mistake. The noun is the subject is mistake, and therefore the verb would be also singular if there is any mistake. But that's pretty much it. Those are all things that could be caught by Grammarly. I don't know if you guys know the program Grammarly or not. Let me put that in the chat box. Grammarly is an auto grammar, spelling, and style correction service. And it corrects virtually anything that you type on your computer. Whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, in a live chat, YouTube post, a Word document, an HTML document, anything that you type on your computer, Grammarly will check for spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Definitely might want to look into a similar program to Grammarly called Ginger. Okay, other questions? What are you guys working on? And how can I help you in your work? Salama writes, Salama writes, I use an apostrophe when speaking, but when I use it in writing, the teacher doesn't accept it. And I don't know why. The reason is very clear, Salama, and it is one that is often encountered when writing formal English in school, especially at your level, which is the university level. And the answer is contractions, which are formed by the apostrophe, are considered informal. Contractions, instead of I should not, I shouldn't, are considered elements of speech, not writing. There's only one apostrophe that is okay to use in academic writing, and that is the apostrophe to show possession, as in the movies. The movies, car chases. So your teacher is simply alerting you to the difference between informal and formal writing. Thania. Hey, Thania, welcome. Glad to have you here. Thania writes, I use Grammarly and I wish I had had it the entire time I was in college. Hey, better late than never. Thania, better late than never. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. So thank you for that comment, Thania. Okay, let's get to Brandon's comment here. Because I think writer's block is something. Brandon asked, did Grammarly pay me to promote them? Brandon, I wish. Okay. So let's talk about writer's block. I have done a few videos on writer's block. I've done research on writer's block. More importantly, in teaching students for the past 30 years, I have counseled many students who have had writer's block. During that time, I have come to recognize two very basic reasons for writer's block. They're very different reasons. The first reason is writer's block occurs because your mind is telling you you are not yet ready to write. In other words, you have not done the work needed prior to writing your first draft. That work, often called pre-writing, can include outlining, writing your thesis statement, reading, researching, making notes, all of those things. The most common one is that you do not yet have an organizational pattern for what you are about to write. The second reason is writing involves formulas. And I assume, Brandon, we're talking about academic writing here. Yes, academic writing involves formulas. And I have several videos on the formulas of academic writing. So in order to be comfortable enough to begin that piece of academic writing, you must first pull out and set it on your desk the academic formula you need to follow. Along with, that's another reason for not being prepared. One more reason for not being prepared: not understanding the assignment directions. Every day of every week, I have one of my YouTube subscribers email to me their professor's assignment instructions. And all I do is put those assignment instructions in normal, plain English. Okay, so not being ready. Second reason, fear. Fear. Now, this fear can be fear of not measuring up to your favorite writer. This fear can come from a lack of self-confidence. This fear can come from negative experiences in the past when you have been negatively judged, and therefore you are engaging in avoidance behavior. You are trying to avoid a situation that caused you pain in the past. Now, to help you, Brandon, and let me put up your second question here, Brandon. To help you with this, I would say that in creative writing, you, Brandon Tran, have obviously read and admired many great writers. And as of right now, Brandon, those writers are sitting on top of your shoulders. And those great writers are whispering to you, you're not good enough. You are not as good as I am. So, one of the first things you must do is say, I am Brandon. I write in Brandon's voice. I write to please Brandon, not to please the great writers sitting on my shoulders. Another thing to tell yourself is there are writers who want only to have written. They enjoy the finished product. And there are writers who enjoy the process of writing and don't care that much about the finished product. So maybe you need to go closer to one than to the other. I don't know where you are, but that is often a schism or a divide that creative writers must negotiate. Okay, here's some practical advice, Brandon. I want you to write what is called a zero draft. Let me put those words in. This is called a zero draft. A zero draft is written like this. You sit down in a place where you are undisturbed. You set a timer on your smartphone for 20 minutes. Maybe you wish to start at 10 minutes, but you set a timer for a block of time. When you start that timer, you begin typing. You type as quickly as you can. You do not stop to reread what you have written. You do not stop to correct what you have written. Your job during that block is to write as much as you can. When the time period is up, you put that away, take a break, set your timer, and do another block of a zero draft. In other words, your goal is simply to get stuff down on the page. You can worry about what it says later. You can worry about how to correct it later. Because here is the position you never, as a writer, want to be in. Never be in this position, and I will demonstrate. Never be in that position. You're supposed to be writing, not thinking. Do not be a head writer. Let me put that in there. A head writer is someone who tries to compose the sentences correctly in his head or her head, and then plop that finished, polished sentence down on the page. If you're a head writer, you're going to be writing slowly. Writing is going to be frustrating, and you will often lose your train of thought. And your writing will really not sound like yourself. So I encourage you to do block writing, not head writing. Salama, meaningful information. Thank you, Salama. Are you also a head writer? Are you a procrastinator? Do you have problems with writer's block? Brandon writes, but the problem here is that I always put up the deadline. Do you mean I don't understand put up the deadline. Explain that to me. Because I have finals week and am too lazy to take on a new assignment. Yes. Okay. That's a great question, Brandon. Yes. Brandon, you have heard of the writer Ernest Hemingway, correct? I'm assuming that you did. Ernest Hemingway and other great writers only write when they're writing a first draft. About 45 minutes a day. Hemingway wrote standing up, and he only allotted 45 minutes a day for writing something new. But 45 minutes a day, let's say you do 200 words, one page, in 45 minutes. Well, what happens after 5 days? You have five pages. What happens after 2 weeks? You have a chapter of a book. What happens after 4 weeks? 2 chapters. You get so Hemingway would write one novel a year by writing 45 minutes a day. What did Hemingway do the rest of the time? He got drunk. He got in fights. He went to bullfights. He picnicked. He wrote letters. But he only put pen to paper for 45 minutes per day. So my advice to you is, Brandon, get up out of bed 1 hour early for the next week, next 4 days. During that 1 hour, write for 45 minutes. And over the next 4 days, you should have between 800 and 1,000 words. When I taught full-time at an on-ground college, I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I wrote fiction for 1 hour. Then I went for a run. Then I got dressed and went to school to my full-time job. So in other words, there was a clear distinction between my writing time and the rest of my life. Okay, how's that, Brandon? Okay, thank you, Brandon. Yeah, let me put your comment up. That feeling dwarfed, feeling overwhelmed, that's that fear kicking in. You are thinking about the end product. That's why you're feeling overwhelmed. Instead of thinking about this 45 minutes. That's all you have to think about, Brandon. This 45 minutes. Then tomorrow's 45 minutes. And then tomorrow's. Now, if you're experiencing difficulty understanding the prompt and planning what you want to write, let's talk about that. Email me the prompt and I will help you come up with an organizational strategy for that prompt. Okay, sorry, I tend to be long-winded. You can tell I am a professor. Thanya, or is it Thania? Thania, do you have any more questions? I believe Thania was from Canada. Is that correct? Salama, any more questions? You're welcome, Brandon. Thank you for your question. Email me if you want to have more help on getting started. Brandon writes, my days are numbered. Brandon, all of our days are numbered. So before I let you go, it's almost top of the hour. Tell me about today's lesson on connected speech, excuse me, connected speech and weak forms. Is that something you had heard before? Is it something that is helpful? Good, Brandon. That's good to hear. Okay, let's see what you wrote here. The prompt they chose for the topic. In my brain, I have tons of info and tons of emotion since it is close to my heart. You feared that I might not be descriptive or detail oriented. That last sentence, your fear, Brandon, that indicates you're focusing on the end product as opposed to getting there step by step. Salama, which in that? Okay, very excellent. I can address that very quickly, Salama. That can refer to people or inanimate things. Which can only refer to inanimate things. That is always restrictive. That means a comma never comes before that. Which can have or not have a comma. Let me write some. Let me put this sentence up. The book that I love is cheap. That is restrictive. In other words, it is necessary to identify the noun. Which book? The book that I love. Is it any book? No. It's only the book that I love. That I love is what we call a restrictive identifier. Let's look at this one. Now compare the last sentence to this one, Salama. The book, which I bought on sale, is now falling apart. Did you hear what happened to my voice? It went down. That's because that clause, which I bought on sale, is not an identifier. It is not necessary to identify which book. The sentence, the book is now falling apart, stands alone by itself. Maybe that's not a good one. To use a proper noun. Let's look at this one. The blueberry pancakes, which are my favorites, can be deep fried. Notice that it is that clause, which are my favorites, is not essential for identifying the blueberry pancakes. Therefore, it is set off by commas. Salama, if you want me in our next live stream, I can do a lesson on identifiers, restrictive identifiers, and then non-restrictive modifiers, if you want me to do that. Okay, will do. Okay, everyone, thank you for coming by. Thank you for your great questions. I appreciate them very much. I hope the lesson was valuable to you. Remember that when I end this broadcast, the video will be available on YouTube. And also in the description of the video, you will find a link to the handout on the 40 words in English that have weak forms. Okay, talk to you guys later.